see this building right here? This was old ice house. The previous owner honestly just let it collapse and fall in on itself. And this wouldn't be so bad, right? It's just a wall. But this is a 2-story. Well, not 2-story. It's got a basement, it's super sick. I think Genay looked, this was built in the 1800s, like the end of the 1800s, because this has been a property for a very long time. And this, either way, this was very old. This was an ice house. The river is, you see that tree line right there? That's the river. So we got about 3/4 of a mile of property line that's on the river right there. They used to go down, cut big blocks of ice out of the river, put it in this cellar and this ice house in the winter, and then throughout the spring into summer, the ice would still be down there and be cool, and they could use the ice, you know, throughout the year. Thought that was super sick, but unfortunately, for as cool as this building is, it's gonna have to come down. It's a safety hazard. It's right up here at the house, and it's just gotta go. We're gonna try to save some of the timbers, maybe some of the stonework, that's all original. Some of the good timbers, because there is a lot of these timbers are still in pretty good shape. So I don't know what we can repurpose those for, but I hate to get rid of it because, like I said, it's so old. It's got a lot of history to it. So try to keep what we can. But yeah, some of that stuff, it's just got to go, which sucks. But you know, it is what it is. All right, we're a little bit late today. It's just before lunch. They said they were gonna start on this building today, getting it out of here. And it's pretty much down. They ain't really hauled any of the wood off yet, but there's definitely not a building standing there anymore. It's crazy to see like how much it opened it up. Again, it sucks it had to go, but even he said as soon as he touched it, the whole thing just collapsed in on itself, man. It was too far gone. Here's all the stuff we're hauling out. And then I told him we wanted to keep some of the better logs. I told you what we wanted to do with them. And this is the timbers we got. I think she's sad. I think she's kind of sad that it's gone, but you know, it is what it is. It had to be done. But I was surprised at how deep this basement was in this thing. Well, the ice house, the root cellar, whatever you want to call it. Well, it's gone now. We went back and forth thinking about what we wanted to do, but now it's gone and the decision's been made.
Yeah.
All I know is it's starting to look good around here. We need to go inside and see what the view looks like from there now without the building in the way. All right, so that's where the building was. Pretty much all right there. You can see better from in here. All of this spot used to be covered up by that building. Once we get all this stuff cleared out of here and all these little trees brought down, you'll be able to see. So there'll be views from, because you know, this is the kitchen. This is where, I mean, the kitchen's the heart of the house. So before, like, to be honest, you couldn't even tell there was woods out there because all you saw was this building. And you're just super, you might have had a little spot right here where Genay is, but now we're gonna have all that. It's gonna be nice. Now that we got everything out of the way, they can fit the big boy up here, and he's making short work of this. The little one over there, it took about 1,000 loads to fill up that truck. That's not a real good use of time, so. We're trying to debate on whether or not I'm gonna bury Genay in this hole. I mean, it's already dug. You really, look on here, honestly, it looks shallow. It's probably 8 foot deep at least, maybe 10 on that side. So yeah, we're putting a pool in right here. All right, we got all the trash out, except for the stuff we're keeping. We've already got one load. It's probably gonna take, I don't know, 10, 15 loads of dirt once it all gets packed down. But yeah, we're running it in. He's, I say we. I am not doing anything. Matter of fact, I'm backing up into the shade. But yeah, I don't know how much we'll get done today. It's supposed to rain all weekend, so hopefully we can get a couple more loads in here so it's not a swimming pool. Otherwise it will be. But yeah, you can see how deep it is. But he's getting us right. I'm actually glad to see progress around here, I'll tell you that. We still got a lot of work to do though, that's for sure. Meanwhile, this is what Genay's got done today. They've got all that done. Genay's got that done. Good job, Genay. Thanks. We're gonna sit out here and watch this guy work, and he's probably gonna hate us. But who cares? It's okay. Coffee. Exactly what was that noise? If he dumps the Predator out of the back of that thing.
Oh my God. There's rocks in that dirt.
Constipation. He's got performance anxiety, he saw us. I suddenly have to use the bathroom after all that coffee. I've heard of making that ass clap, but now I know somebody's gonna ask what this was, this cable here, and there's another smaller one. Y'all might have saw while we were going through this, I don't know. But one of them was going to that beautifully high-tech thing right there, and the other one was going to this, I guess it's a CB radio tower, I don't know. To be honest, he's gonna get that out of here, but I think I'm gonna keep this. And I don't know anything about CB radios, but I think I'm gonna learn something, and I'll keep that, get it wired back up, you know, just, you know, end of the world type stuff. You never know what you might need. So a CB radio out here on all this acreage might come in clutch. I don't know. Look at this shot, by the way. Look at this shot with the sun over the house. Come on. Can YouTube videos win Oscars or Emmys or anything? Because this is beautiful. Now, I'm not sure, but this may be the last load of dirt. We'll see. We'll see how much he can move this around, but if it's not the last, it's the next to the last. Because he's not got this. You can see here, this is pretty light. He hasn't packed it down yet, so who knows? But yeah, I feel like it's gonna be super close. Watching all these boys come out here and work in these bobcats, these little track machines, track loaders, 100% I'm buying one. Now, I don't know which one's great. I mean, I've seen everything from New Holland to Bobcat to Cat. Well, actually just those three. But I imagine, to be honest, they're all probably about the same. But I do know I want a track, and I'm gonna get a closed cab with AC. He said he might sell me this one. So if you see me in this one right here, well, surprise. Oh yeah, I think, again, he's still gonna pack it down, so maybe I'm wrong. But I think this is gonna be just enough dirt. Once again, let me go ahead and remind y'all that it is Friday. You saw where the sun is, it's low. It's after 7, it's 7:15. And he was still out here making sure that he got enough dirt out here to get rid of this hole, because it's supposed to rain all weekend. And he didn't want me to have a soppy sinkhole that he's over here playing in the mud trying to finish the job. So shout out to Brad for going above and beyond to make sure that, you know, the yard doesn't get all destroyed. Now I'm curious, because I'm new to all this, so I'm curious to see what they do about all these big surface rocks. Like, I don't know if he's got a big rake. You saw him using the teeth earlier. He put them down and was dragging it. But I'm curious, you know, if there's some kind of like grading box or something that's got teeth on it that pull all these rocks out. Or maybe he just leaves them and packs them down, which is probably the easier way to do it, I would imagine. But the last thing I want to do is hit one of these big rocks and throw it up through the window in the house, right? I'll tell you what, one day we go from having a full building here with a huge basement to being some dirt. It's starting to look smooth as a baby's bottom to me. You excited? You ready to go home and eat, aren't you? So we've been out here all day. We gotta drive an hour home, then we gotta cook. I'm pretty hungry too, but I like to see stuff get done. And if I'm not here, who's gonna record it for y'all? I'm gonna try to get lower so y'all can see. I don't know about y'all, but this is looking pretty good. This is your show today.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
What are we doing today?
We're going to talk about the history of where we're living. I mean, the land, the house that we're tearing down, not right now, where we're going to live.
Right.
The house that we're going to tear down, how that's historically significant, because, spoiler alert, it is. The land, what was there before, all of that good stuff. Well, welcome to my office. Like he said, I guess it's my show today. This is where I record my podcast with my friend Susan Sanders. If you want to check that out, just search Conscious Contact Podcast wherever you listen to them. It'll pop up for you. I'll put a link in the description as well. So, the land that we purchased is in Eden, North Carolina. Now, it was not originally Eden, North Carolina. When it was first incorporated, it was in the Draper section of what is now Eden, North Carolina, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So originally, the tribe of Indians that lived where our land is the Saura or the Chura. I'm sure I'm saying both of those really badly. And that was in the upper and lower sections of near the Dan River. So it was Upper Saura Town and Lower Saura Town. So in the early 18th century, they had kind of dispersed into different parts of that area and kind of abandoned where the house is currently sitting. Around 1773, William Byrd, who was originally from Virginia, was tasked with basically choosing where the line between Virginia and North Carolina was. He was also given a grant of 20,000 acres to develop into basically just townships and an economy, pretty much. So when he saw this area, this grant that he received, he called it the Land of Eden. In his journals, he refers to this area as being so beautiful that it reminds him of the Land of Eden. So in the late 18th century, the lower area was frontier land and a township, but there wasn't much in the way of actual settlement going on until early in the 19th century. And that kind of brings us to who originally built a homestead on the site where the house that we're about to tear down currently is. So Thomas Robinson Sharp was born February 22nd of 1834 in Pennsylvania. He was a railroad engineer following in the footsteps of his father. Early in the Civil War, he was actually drafted by the Confederate Army to be a railroad engineer for them. So he became a captain in the Confederate Army in 1861, which leads us to kind of his crowning achievement during his military history. He was part of the Great Train Raid of 1861. Now, this is said to be one of the largest railroad raids in all of military history. I don't know a ton about it, so you can definitely look that up on your own. Greater minds than I have dove into it and talked at length about what went into it, what happened, how it changed the landscape of the war, and what the outcome was, which, if you know your history, you're probably pretty sure of what happened. So after that, he became the military railroad superintendent and continued on in that position until after the war. He moved to Eden in 1879 on a 1,400-acre parcel of land, 214 acres of which we currently have in our possession. So on that land, he built his own home, the Edgewood Plantation, near the Dan River. And it's after the Smith and the Dan split. It is on the Dan River in that section. And he also developed a hamlet in that area that was named after him. So he died in 1909 and he's buried in Lawson Cemetery. His wife, his daughter, and his father-in-law are also buried in Eden in a different cemetery. So that kind of brings us to the end of the history of that land for a huge chunk of time. Again, he died in 1909 and it was owned by various hands throughout that time period. But in the background, Eden, which was then Leakesville, Spray, and Draper, 3 different cities, was a booming mill town. There were textiles, there was metal, there were chemicals, just a booming center of industry, and a large population was starting to grow up in each of those areas. Leakesville was incorporated or named as a city in 1874. Draper was not incorporated until 1949, and Spray was not incorporated until 1951. So they were 3 separate entities, all with large mills operating in each of them, but extremely close together and a small size for these different areas. So in 1967, I guess the towns or the cities had kind of come together and they were debating on whether they were going to incorporate all 3 of Leakesville, Spray, and Draper into one. So they decided that they were going to, and then they were bouncing off names for this new place. They didn't want to just pick from the existing, they wanted it to have a new name after they were all put together. So like I mentioned before, when William Byrd came down and was surveying the land, he had called it in his journals the Land of Eden. So that was one of the options they were considering. And let me preface this with, it was the 60s. So I think it was 1967. The other option was LSD for Leakesville, Spray, and Draper. So the town of Eden, North Carolina almost became LSD. So Fieldcrest bought the land that our house sits on from Union Carbide in the early 60s. So in the late 60s, Fieldcrest Mills owned that section of land, and they were going through some changes in leadership. And they were about to bring on a new president. His name was Bill Battle. Bill's wife did not want to move to Eden, North Carolina. They lived in Fielddale, Virginia, and they had what was basically a hunting lodge there. So she said the only way that she was going to move is if he could pick up that house and move it to Eden, North Carolina. Obviously, that's impossible, but he created an almost exact replica, and that is the house that is currently on the land. So he never lived here full time. Neither one of them did. She actually was scared to be in the house alone. It is on a large portion of land, so kind of understandable. But during this time, the land was used as an executive lodge. So the higher ups in Fieldcrest or any out of town guests that they were trying to court to get to do business with them would come stay at the lodge and would hunt. Because of that, there were a ton of birds that were added into the ecosystem. So there's still currently quail there. And Bill Battle had pointers that he kept on the grounds to go out with them when they would hunt. So all of the bigwigs would come and hunt, schmooze. There were large parties there, and they would also have employee days where people from Fieldcrest Mills would come, have picnics, and just celebrate being together. So the bottom 110 acres of the land that we're on is kind of a flood zone, but it's called a 100-year flood zone. It doesn't flood particularly often, obviously, but it can stay pretty wet if it rains on a consistent basis. This is apparently perfect for corn, so they had an outside farmer come and use that bottom 110 acres to farm corn during this time as well. So Fieldcrest kind of disbanded in the early 2000s, and Bill Battle was not a part of the company at that point anymore. So fast forward to the early 90s, after the big mill boom from the 60s to the 80s, they started to try to get rid of a little bit of property to try to save money in any way that they could. So in the early 90s, the property was sold to a local town doctor, and that is who owned it up until the time that we bought it in 2021. So yeah, that's a long story short of how we got to where we're at now. The ice house was still there next to the Fieldcrest Lodge. Unfortunately, it was not taken care of. The roof was falling in. The two back walls were very close to caving in on themselves. Tried to contact a number of different historical preservation branches within city, state, and federal government. Nobody ever got back to me, so we had to unfortunately take it down. We did save a whole lot of the timbers from that, and we're hoping to either put back up some very rustic traditional fencing or use it in another application in the house somewhere to be able to preserve that. We also saved a ton of the cedar from the two huge cedar trees that you saw that we had to cut down from around the house. So when we originally saw the house, the ice house was still there. However, it was in really bad condition. It was right next to the Fieldcrest Lodge, the new one that was built in the 70s. It had two of the back walls that were caving in. The roof was about to cave in on itself as well, and we unfortunately had to take it down. I didn't know exactly what an ice house was. I assumed, yes, it's an ice house. You have ice inside of it, but I'm thinking back then, because the ice house was original to Edgewood Plantation that Captain Thomas Robinson Sharp had owned back in the early 1900s. So, like I said, the area of land butts up against the Dan River. So they would actually go walk to the Dan River, which is about 100 acres, and dig huge blocks of ice out of the frozen river, drag that all the way back up to the house and put it in the bottom of the ice house, basically like a root cellar area. They would use that to not only keep that area cool, to keep all of the preserved food, but they would use that for ice throughout the winter, and they said it would last into the heat of the middle of the summer. So when we originally saw the house, we were really excited to be able to kind of preserve that part of Eden's history. The Fieldcrest Lodge, like I said, hosted a lot of employee parties, and randomly enough, Luke's grandmother actually attended one of these and remembered going to the house. So we were trying to do as much of that as possible while making it into a modern house because all of the doors. And we had gotten it worked out where the layout flowed decently, and we were happy with what we had come up with. And then we got the quote for actually doing the remodel, and it was going to be the same as or more than just tearing it down and building a new house. As you've heard us talk about, that ended up being a blessing in disguise because we had an asbestos test done once we were about to start demo on it, and everything tested positive. So while we would have loved to continue to keep that house intact and make it new, it just wasn't possible. The house was not taken care of very well, so we would have run into other problems, and with the asbestos there, we just couldn't do it. But with the plan of the new house, which I'm sure we'll give you sneak peeks of the design of that soon, we are trying to keep some of the same features, the same look of the house. It's going to be in the exact same spot that the current house is sitting. So it's going to look out on the same views, which is what we fell in love with. The land was really it for us. So we obviously get to keep that. Unfortunately, the house has to go, but we get to keep the same vistas. The layout's going to be pretty similar, as in the rooms are going to kind of be in the same area of the house as you go across. They'll have kind of the same views that the current windows have, so that's really exciting. We're going to bring that cedar in that we had to tear down in the last video, some of the tie-ins from the ice house, and just different nods to the actual old home. We've also got huge blueprints and printouts of not only the original survey for the tract of land when it was sold in the 90s, but also the blueprints for the original house itself when it was built. So I'm sure that we'll have those framed and put up in the house too. So I hope that you enjoyed learning a little bit more about the house, the land, the history. It was really interesting to me to look into it, not only because, I mean, we bought the place and we're going to live there, but also because Eden is such a special town and has so much history within it. And I also share a birthday with the original builder of the original farmhouse, Captain Thomas Robinson Sharp. So it just kind of seemed like the universe worked all together and wanted us to live on this land. And we're excited to not only build the house, but to start replanting stuff, to have a garden there again, to have some outer buildings. Luke's been showing you the progress on his, and to be able to really have this land work the way that it used to, and to be able to enjoy it. So that's all, folks.